Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to go over one of my favorite mid lane champions in Ziggs. I'm going to give you guys my top 5 tips I think every single Zigg player needs to know. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name is Lofit. I do educational content, do tips videos, guide videos, also stream here on YouTube if you want to check that out. Now, if you have any questions for me directly, I'm going to put a link to my Discord in the pinned comments, as well as you can hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified when I go live, and you can just ask me any questions there. I'd be happy to help you out. Next up, I'm a bit limited with this format of only 5 tips because I don't want these videos to run too long, so make sure to comment your own tips down below if you'd like to help out some of your fellow Ziggs players. And finally, I put timestamps at the top of each of my pages whenever I have a video up, so if you want to skip this intro, if you're going to skip a certain tip, make sure to check that out. And with that all out of the way, let's get into the first tip. Alright, and getting into tip number 1, I want to give you guys a couple of different tips and a little bit of a better understanding with Ziggs Q mechanic, and that is, it always bounces 3 times no matter how far you throw it away from yourself, or if you throw it on top of yourself, it is always going to have those 3 bounces with a similar amount of time. The only thing that you can do to kind of change up these different bounces is if you throw it into terrain, it is not always going to be bouncing 3 times if there is no room for it to bounce, and then it bounces further with each hop depending on how far away you throw it from yourself. So if you throw it really close to yourself, it's not going to have too much bounce to it, but it might be good for covering a certain area or choke point. And then the farther away you throw, the more just sheer terrain that it can cover when you have your Q. Now, with Summoner's Rift, something I want to cover, there is no hitbox that goes over. For example, if there is something like a Tristana Wing away and going over, she can be hit by every single thing on the ground. So when you are looking to throw your Q and using the Q mechanic on Ziggs, there's no way for it to bounce over the enemy unless you throw it over for the first bounce. So what this means is that if it's ever in the path of a champion and it already has bounced, it will do damage to a champion that is in its trajectory. The last thing you want to do is throw it over and have it start his bounces before the enemy. So always make sure to kind of shorthand it a little bit so the enemy, you don't accidentally throw your Q over the enemy. And finally, the last tip that I'm going to give you guys with your Q is to extend the range with your satchel charge and getting a longer range Q. We've all had that experience of playing with Ziggs, and then all of a sudden someone just gets away with just a little bit of a sliver of health, and your last Q would have killed him, but you wouldn't have been able to do it. And sometimes just extending your Q range with that W can be quite effective. However, this is one of your really big defensive cooldowns, so be very careful when using your satchel charge, as it is a rather long cooldown at the lower levels, and it is kind of your get out of jail free card in lane. So just make sure that you are not under a huge amount of threat. There isn't like a Malzahar right here around the corner ready to suppress you after using your W. And that will wrap up tip number 1 for Ziggs. Alright, and getting into number 2, I want to talk about a couple of things that revolve around the satchel charge with Ziggs. So, what it does, and after the most recent changes of just the patch today, it increases the units of the knockback. So this is going to be an even more effective tool when you are looking to play Ziggs. The maximum amount of distance that can be created is when you are both hitting yourself and the enemy. You are going to knock each person a certain amount of units away, and you're going to be able to create quite a bit of distance. So this is an extremely effective tool for when the enemy is looking to close on you. Now, it is really important to understand that you are able to knock yourself over walls with your W, and this can be a great way for Ziggs to scale with the terrain and just pop around the map in a way that a lot of other people aren't going to be able to follow you, because not everyone has a dash type mechanic, as this is kind of like a pseudo dash for Ziggs. Getting really good at understanding where you need to be positioned to have your W over the wall is going to be pretty important, especially with the recent changes on the unit changes with the knockback of the W. This is going to be extremely important with your with using Ziggs. Also, a thing that a W can do is it's going to guarantee an enemy to be in a certain position when you are hitting and knocking them back, because they're unable to move inside of the knockback. Getting used to throwing your combo out at that position of where they are going to be knocked back to is going to be great. Also, punishing them with a minefield, putting it in front of them and making them walk through that if they want to continue chasing you can be good. So making sure to use your W in a way that is going to just be optimal is going to revolve around those couple of small different things, and creating maximum amount of distance with knocking both you and them, using the W over walls, and also using W to set up a little bit of damage for yourself. And also, since the ultimate has a delay and everyone knows that they need to get the hell out of dodge when they see this mega inferno bomb going up, hitting people with the knock up and throwing that is going to limit their time that they're going to be able to have run away, and making sure that they aren't either flashing or dashing out. This can be quite effective. And that will wrap up tip number 2. Alright, and tip number 3, we're going to go over a couple of things with the E. Now, sadly, when you throw out your E in certain situations, the E mines can fizzle, and this happens when they are inside of the wall. As you can see here, it should be displaying some mines. If they were able to be spawned inside of the wall, they would have stuck around there. So making sure that you're not trying to throw out E mines maybe to stop a cane and try and do damage to them when they're on the wall. This is not going to work. So try and keep this in mind, and do not fizzle out any of your mines. When you are in choke points, you want to cover as much of the terrain as possible, so making sure that every single mine is there and you're not overstacking it to one side and making more mines on one side, as it is a great circle. This is going to be extremely important to understand that mines fizzle out when they are inside of the walls. Next up, with League of Legends as a whole, there are no ways for people to jump over things. They are going to have to go through the mines. So champions with dashes like Tristana or Akali or Lucian, if they are looking to dash over and use those dashes and use that mobility, they are going to take a crap ton of damage. If you didn't know that the triggering of mines, they take more damage the more mines that they proc in a stacking fashion. So making sure that you have this E up in the direction that they are looking to dash can be exceedingly punishing, because for some reason a lot of people still think it's okay, oh, I'm just going to jump over things with these, just because that's how the visual effects look with the Tristana W. There is no way to dodge skill shots by jumping over them in League of Legends. So making sure to punishing mobile champions with your mines can be extremely effective, as well as doing something similar to this. You have a minefield set up maybe behind the enemy, and because you want to stop any further reinforcements, and then knocking them back with the W can be a great way to get a slow on them, as well as do a little bit of extra damage. So make sure that you are being very, very cognizant of your minefield, because it is the longest cooldown of your basic abilities, as your satchel goes down to 10 and your bouncing bomb goes down to 3. That this is a really high impact spell that is going to be extremely important for your overall crowd control and zone of control when you are playing Ziggs as the mid laner. And that will wrap up this tip. Alright, and getting into the next tip, I'm going to give you guys a couple of little tips that come along with the R. And then if you didn't know that the primary blast zone that is displayed by this circle, the enemies are going to take a lot more damage. So how you can look to take advantage of this in team fights is by throwing your ultimate at targets that are CC'd, slowed, stunned, suppressed, feared, silenced. Any of those kind of things are going to help you land your Mega Inferno Bomb. So looking to try and set up your ultimate on people either slowed by the minefield, or maybe they just got knocked back into a certain area with the satchel charge, can be a great way to set up your Mega Inferno Bomb. Also, take advantage of your allies' slows and stuns. If you see you have something like a Leona on the team that is going to look to get a big solar flare off, waiting to combo with that is going to be a great way to play out Ziggs. So making sure that you understand your allies' strengths in CCing can really help set you up with the Mega Inferno Bomb. Also, this can be a great deterrent against people that are looking looking to dive on top of you as you are pressing your ultimate. If they want to stay right on top of you, they're going to get heavily punished. The second thing I want to talk about with the ultimate is how it is displayed on the map. As when you throw it farther away from you, this big circle only starts becoming visible when it lights up. The farther away you throw it, it's not visible, then it goes visible. Show that again. Watch as it starts becoming a little bit brighter on the skill shot. That is when the enemy starts seeing the cursor. Right here is when they're going to start seeing this big circle coming at them. So making sure you understand that, as well as the flight time is going to be rather important when you are playing Ziggs, and getting a good understanding of how far you have to lead the enemies if you want to zone them out of different situations is going to be rather important, as well as maybe you're throwing a ultimate to clear out a wave and the wave is moving a little bit. Can be a great way to, it's just really nice to go into the practice tool to practice your ult and getting used to the different missile speeds that go with your ultimate, and making sure that you are leading the allies. Next up, with your Mega Infernal Bomb, it isn't the most punishing ultimate cooldown if you miss it, but it can be a great way if you just need, maybe your top laner dies. I always hear everyone complaining about their teammates, so I'm sure this happens to you a lot, and you just want to go up and clear a wave. This can be an extremely effective way for to roam with your ultimates, as well as doing something like maybe zoning out a Teemo that is running away from your fighter or bruiser top laner. This can be an extremely effective way for Ziggs to help the other lanes, as it is a semi-global ultimate. He does have a decent amount of roam, and as well as his ability to control small gaps in these places where skirmishes happen all the time in the river. And that will wrap up this tip. Alright, and getting into the final tip, I want to talk about where Ziggs' strengths just lie and where you should be looking to take advantage of Ziggs and his abilities. And this is choke points. As with most ability-based champions, you really want to look and set up fights in areas where it is a condensed zone, where it is very hard for the enemy to dodge. So when you are playing Ziggs, you're probably playing him in the mid lane, unless you're one of the ADC players, or maybe a one trick that just gets auto-filled up into the top. You really want to be playing around objectives, because a great thing that objectives give are team fight setups around a lot of choke point areas that Ziggs can really take advantage of. So make sure that you are roaming and really taking an active part in these skirmishes in these really condensed areas, as Ziggs' damage can be just extremely strong and really punishing to the enemy in team fights with his AoE abilities. Ziggs is a great front to back team fighter, so if you didn't know what that means, it is champions that look to have both the front lines of each team just right in front of each other, and then the back line stays behind the front line, and you try and kill the tank, and you work in a front to back type of manner, or you have just a basic front line in front and you are looking to maybe poke out the enemy backline. And a great thing about Ziggs is he has backline access without having to overextend too far with his really strong range. So making sure that you are staying behind your allies and really starting to punish people from a distance can be an extremely great way for to play out Ziggs in the late game team fights. So again, always look for team fights around choke points and around objectives, particularly in the mid game when you have a little bit of maybe a spell pen and a Luden's completed, is going to be a really strong point for you in the game. So when you are playing Ziggs, he is a very heavy poke champion, so making sure that you are setting up a little bit early, maybe having a little bit of vision laid down, getting control wards and warding totems, and say the Baron spawns in 30 minutes and you want to go over here, making sure that you have the proper vision set up to just heavily poke out the enemy before the team fight starts is going to be a great way to play out Ziggs. And that will wrap up my final tip, guys. If you have any questions for me, you can hit me up in the Discord link down below. And as always, take it easy.